In the miscellaneous section of the parts, you have the parts master inventory, the core maintenance, and your price books. Let's go ahead and open up the master inventory. This is the screen where you input all of your parts or import your parts from price books. Let's go ahead and do a search, and we pull up the first part here. Now you may have noticed that when I did the search, I didn't type in a part number, I typed in a 1. And that is because these parts have multiple identifiers. And for ease and speed, I created an identifier called the number 1. So I could type in a 1 and recall this part, or I could type in its part number, 55-9012, and recall it. Or I could use maybe another supplier's part number. But we're going to get into the identifiers in just a few minutes. This is the General tab. On it, as you can see, shows you what company this part is used for. Shows you total on hand, total allocated to different jobs or customers, and your total available for sale. Total on back order and total on order. Here we have our bin locations and the quantity in each bin. And we could have more bin locations if we wanted to. And to add bin locations, we'll go to the bin location tab, and we can add more. If we wanted to break this up into an aisle and a row, so we have two ways of doing it. We type the bin location right in here in this box, or we can break it up by aisle, row, and shelf position. But we'll go back to the General tab, and now you can see we have more bin locations. So that's where the bin locations are set up, is on the bin location tab, but they're displayed here. You can have images of the parts, and we'll get to the images tab here in a minute. And then we come down to other pieces of information about the part. What's its weight? What weight type is it using? Ounces or metric? Your min and your max? Who is your default supplier? What category do you want this part to be in? And the category is used to determine when this part is sold, how is accounting going to disperse that sale. So in this case, it's in a category of just standard parts. There are different categories that you could set up: freight, gas, oil and grease, sublet, shop supplies, things like that, that you can add into your inventory, which will go to different GL account numbers when they are sold on an invoice. This part can only be sold on a particular make or model or class. You can have these in on the drop down, and it'll warn you if you start to sell this part, which might be only for a Fleetwood Bounder, and you're using it on some other type of vehicle. Again, the departments you could set up that would specify that only this department could sell it. And then you have your source, and you can define your sources internally. If this part uses an alternate tax file, and in certain countries there are certain parts that are only taxable or taxed at a different rate. So you could select which tax alternate file to use when this part was being sold. And this invoice reminder will pop up on the screen when I go to sell this part. So I can remind the customer or give them some more information about the part. I can type my own memo in here, which just tells me more information but doesn't pop on the invoicing screen. This is the pricing calculations. And for example, you have price category A is 75C. So if you took this current replacement cost here, which is $21, and said I'm going to mark it up by 1.75 or 75% over my cost, you're going to get the $36.75. Price category B is 85C, so it's going to be 85% over this replacement cost. Price category C is 100L. So 100L is going to be $33, which is our list or retail price, and you can see this here. D is going to be 90L. That means they're going to get a 10% discount. So if you took 0.9 and multiplied it by 33, you would get $29.70. Now the reason why we have these different classifications here is so that you can set up different customer classifications. And so if one customer comes in and they are a wholesale customer and you sell them at 75% above cost, the system will automatically charge them the $36.75 because they're in a price A category as a customer. But a standard retail customer coming in is going to pay 100% of your list price, and you classify all of those customers in your category C. Now you get to set all of these up by going in on the pricing tab, and this is where you type in the different prices. So you've got 75C, which is a percentage over cost. You have 80 and 90L, which is a percentage of your list price, and you can even type in one called 35A. And 35A is a percentage above your average cost. So if you're buying parts, and one day you bought a part and it was $1, and the next day you bought another part for $2, you've spent $3 in total inventory. You have two parts, and the total of those parts is $3. So your average cost is $1.50. And a lot of dealerships will use average costing to manage the costs of their inventory. And so if you wanted to mark up over average cost, you could put in 35% over A, or whatever percentage that you want. But we don't recommend that. And the reason for that is that when you're doing average costing, is you can go out and purchase 100 of these items, and the supplier will say, since you purchased 100 of these items, instead of them being $1 a piece, they're going to be 75 cents a piece. So at that point in time, do you want to pass on those savings to your customer, or do you want to keep that profit because you purchased in bulk instead of purchasing them one at a time? So you'll make that decision. And in that case there, we would say that you would keep the profits for yourself. So you would set your customers up that they're going to pay at a retail rate, or they're going to pay at a replacement cost rate. And you will hold on to the savings for doing bulk purchasing. But if you want to pass that savings on to the customer because you did buy 100 of these at one time, then you could set it at 35% above your average cost. Now we get over here to selling packaging. In this case here, we have the fact that we're going to sell these as eaches. And the purchase packaging is 1, and the packaging ratio is 4. This means that every time that we purchase them, we get a pack of 4 of them. So we're going to take that pack of 4 and we're going to break it open and sell them as an individual part. Now, if we wanted to sell them as a package of 4, we would put them in as a 4-pack, and we would change the packaging ratio to 1. That means that every time that we bought a 4-pack of these, we would sell them as one 4-pack. We'll go back to our eaches and set our packaging ratio back to 4. Retail price is highlighted in yellow just to make it stand out. So when you pull this up and you're in a hurry because you have customers waiting at the counter, you can quickly see where the retail price is. Then you have replacement cost, and then you have your average cost. So in this case here, we have some deflation of parts. So you have purchased a bunch in the past at a higher price than what you can purchase them for right now. If there was a core charge associated with this part, go ahead and type in the core charge. And then on the invoice, this system will prompt you to say, has the customer brought the core in? If he has not brought the core in, it will automatically apply a core charge to the invoice. Your suggested reorder method is either simple min-max or the suggested sales history reorder. You have a profit margin that you are currently making off of this based on the retail price and the replacement cost. And then for our international customers, you have the country of origin and the tariff code, so that when parts are brought in from outside of the country and a duty or tariff has to be applied to it, the system will automatically calculate that on your purchase invoice. Next, we have checkboxes that identify this part's classification, such as, is it a clearance item? Is it an item that you always drop ship? Non-stock? Is it taxable? And the reason why we have it as is taxable is there are certain dealerships that also have a convenience store where they will sell milk and candy and other things that are non-taxable items. So if you had a gallon of milk loaded in as one of your parts, so you're controlling your same inventory with your parts inventory as your convenience store inventory, you could say that gallon of milk was non-taxable. Is it GST taxable? That would be for Canadian and other European dealers that have goods and services tax that is applied from a federal level. Is it commercial tax exempt? There are certain states and countries that say if this product is going to be used on a commercial heavy-duty truck or other commercial tax exempt items, then this part here would be checked as commercial tax exempt, and then in your entity, when that customer comes in to buy these things, he would be notated that he is a commercial customer. So those locales where the taxing authority says commercial parts sold to commercial companies is non-taxable, this part would not be taxed on the invoice. Is it taxed on the purchase? Do you have to pay sales tax before you purchase it, or duty tax when you bring that part in? Then you have items such as an incentive item that you're going to incentivize to your sales people or your stock people to get rid of this part for clearance purposes. Is it an obsolete item? You want to click this to make sure that it no longer appears on your suggested reorder. Many of your parts price books from your manufacturers like Ford, GM, Chrysler, and some of the other suppliers will automatically check this box for you as far as an obsolete item. But if your supplier does not supply you with that, you need to come in and manually check these off when they start to become obsolete. Track the serial number. If you check this off, then the system is going to prompt you for the serial number when this item is sold. For example, if you sell a CD player, there are times where that CD player may get taken out of its box and an old used one put back into the box and the customer comes to return it. And in this case here, you go in and you will record the serial number of the individual part. Now you can either record the serial number at the time that it is sold to the customer, and that would be recording it at the cashier's window, or click the serial number tab and you can add the serial numbers. And now, since the serial numbers are already preloaded on this part, when the cashier goes to ring this part up, or the parts counter person or whoever's selling it, it will prompt them with a list of serial numbers. So they won't have to type in the serial number. They can just look at the serial number on the item and then click the serial number that they want on the invoice. So a pop-up screen will be on their invoice. The system will even identify which serial numbers have been sold. So when the person comes back to return the part, we will know that this person actually bought from us that specific item. Do not allocate. As you see it, we have on the allocation. So we could check it off to say do not allocate, and that means that when the service department starts to use some of these parts, we don't want them being tied up from the parts department. This might be a special part that the parts department has to turn over, and you don't want it allocated at this time. Barcode. When you receive the parts, since this is checked, the computer system will automatically start to build the barcode file, and you can print off barcodes. So if we received 10 of these items, it would print off 10 barcodes for us to put the stickers right there on the parts. And these barcodes are going to print with the base part number up here, or the entire part number here, and it's going to use that part number. And we're going to get into these part numbers here in a little bit about identifiers, how you can use your own in-house part numbers. But let's continue with the checkboxes. Lock the description on the invoice. If you watch the invoicing videos for the basic and advanced, you'll see that you can actually click into the description field and change the description of a part. Now, if you don't want somebody doing that on this part, you can always lock the description field on the invoice. Now, the reason why you would not lock it is maybe you have a product that you're selling and there's multiple colors of them, and you want to record what color this person ordered, but you don't want to go in here and have a different part number. So in this case, this part that's displayed here is yellow, and we might have some black ones and some green ones. So when the invoice item pops up, I would have this unchecked. It would show this description as a connector 15 amp, and then on the invoice, I would probably just go to the end of the description line and type the color in, or what other additional information that I wanted to put onto that description. So locking the description field on the invoice is useful on certain parts that you don't want a person adjusting, and on others you leave it unchecked so you could adjust the description. Is this a featured item? A featured item is one if you are uploading your parts inventory to your internet parts web store, you could say that this is a feature item, and then based on your webmaster is how he's programmed that, he could pick up the items that are featured items and have them displayed for sale or with internet discounts. Do not discount is on the invoice line, there is a column for discount amount. Or if you clicked on the button at the bottom of the invoice where you're going to discount the entire invoice, this item would not be discounted if this checkbox were checked. Is it an active item? You can check or uncheck the active items, and there are certain reports that you can go in there and say, I don't want these parts being active, and they will no longer appear onto your reports. But in this case here, we're going to go ahead and check active so that all of these parts that we run on our reports, we will always know that they're active parts. Then you have prompt for cost and prompt for price. You may have a part that you sell and the cost varies highly, especially on some special order items. So you may get on the phone with your supplier and they're going to tell you what the cost of that part is immediately that day if you place the order. In this case, when you put that part on an invoice, it's going to pop up and say, give me the current cost of the part as it is today. And likewise, you could check prompt for price, and the computer will pop up and say, give us the current list price. And that way you don't have to come in here and adjust the retail and replacement cost of these parts. It will just go right along with the flow of the invoice when you are working with a customer. We've already talked about bin locations and the pricing tab. The ship times tab automatically fills in. The computer is just a display. It goes and looks at your history and sees how long it took to receive an order from these suppliers. Your sales tab is if you want to put this part on sale and run a special. So in this case here, we have a holiday sale, and we can say that we have a beginning date and an ending date, and the description of it. If I want to add another sale, I could type in the dates. And then I go to the price count, and I could say that this is going to be 50% of list price. And the computer calculates the price for us at $16.50. Now what that means is if somebody comes in and buys this part on New Year's Day, they're only going to pay $16.50. Any other time, the sale is going to end after that day. And so it will go back to the normal pricing categories that we established on the pricing tab. Now, if your price on the pricing tab is better than 50L, the computer is going to supply the customer with the lowest current retail price. Accessories are items that can be sold in conjunction with this part. And let's use an example of a laptop computer. You can buy a laptop and then you can assign multiple accessories that you would want your salesperson to say, wouldn't you like to have a laptop case to go along with that laptop or an external mouse to go along with that? So you could list different items here that are accessories that could be sold to the customer in conjunction with this part. Built-in materials are for manufacturing, and so we can come in here and start to add different parts. Now I'm going to just select random parts here for an example. So let's say we have these fuses and this plastic switch hose or whatever this is that we're using. And we are going to manufacture a kit. And in that kit, we'll say it's a Coast Guard safety kit. And it's going to have a life jacket, a water canister, a signal flare, and a few other things. So building materials, you take all of your parts that are going to be required to go into creating that individual kit. And in this case here, you type in the quantity of these that you would need for that kit. So you can then start to use that for building, products where you know how much of a supply you're going to need. So if we had these Coast Guard kits that we're putting together for people, or survival kits, we would know that we'd need certain quantities of these. So the next time that we take an inventory and the computer suggests that we need to reorder or restock 10 of these kits, this screen right here would recalculate all of the build and materials that were going to be needed to create those additional kits for stocking. The computer automatically figures upsell for you. And it's going to go through your parts history. It will then say other people who bought the same product that you're buying also bought these other products. That's called upselling. And the computer will automatically calculate that for you. And you'll see that if you look at the advanced video for the parts invoicing, there is a button called upsell. And you can click that and it will tell you the parts that the other people have purchased in conjunction with buying this part. We've already shown you the serial numbers. Then we also have the substitute tab. The substitute tab are parts that can be substituted for this. In some cases, they are supersession parts, but in other cases, they're just plain substitutes. For example, this connector amp is a yellow connector amp. We may have a black connector amp that works just as well, and we can put those substitute numbers in there. They are not identifiers. They are a completely different part that can be used in place of this. Then you have your sales trends. This shows you every year that you've owned this part and how many you started to sell throughout the history of owning the part. How many you've ordered and how many lost sales you've had because you did not have them in stock when a customer needed them. Your barcodes. You can print shelf labels for these barcodes, and you can type information in that you want on those shelf labels. Your images tab. This is where you can go in, and if you wanted just to drag more images, you could find an image on your hard drive and just drag it and drop it right into this section here, and it puts it into your images folder for this part. The all-important identifiers. This tab allows you to type in different numbers that identify that part. The system will actually build this identifiers tab for you with different price books. For example, we take this part right here as 559012. Now that may be the dealership's part number, or it might be a supplier's part number, but we type in the part number that we want up here in the header of this part. Then we may have that Stag Parkway here has that same part where they have switched the part number on this part. Now, this is test data, and Stag very rarely switches the part, so don't use that as an example related to that company. But use it as an example that we can have multiple part numbers that all identify this single part. So in this case here, if I were to order that part from Bell Industries, it would be 80913. If I went into a purchase order and I said I want 55-9012, when it printed out and transmitted the part to Bell Industries, it's going to pick up this part number here, which is the 80913. Likewise, if we ordered the same part from Thetford, Thetford would receive the order with this number on it. When we get that part back and we typed in 80913, it would automatically convert the number back to our 55 9012. Now you can also put your own hotkey identifiers in there. Like I use the number 1. And if you remember at the beginning of this video, when I wanted to recall the part number, I just typed in a 1 down here and hit enter. I can type in any number on an invoice or a search screen, any one of these numbers listed here in the identifier, and recall or sell that part number. If you're selling this part on the internet, your internet webmaster can come in here and start to tell you what to enter in for your descriptions, your alternate tags, your metadata, and so forth. But you want to click the button, say display on internet. If it's not displayed on internet, the system will not export that data to a file that can be read by your webmaster's import routine for the website. The Options tab is used for apparel, and you may bring in 50 jackets to sell in your motorcycle shop. And in those jackets, some are small, medium, and large. Some are blue, some are black, some are red. Now you want to inventory them all as one part number. So that part would be listed under this part number, but you'd have different options. And you'd want to start to track how many red ones versus black ones versus blue ones and sizes and so forth on it. So in this case here, you can still have variety underneath the individual part. Down at the bottom, we have the buttons, and we're going to go ahead and do a search. So yes, we want to save that. And it brings up the search screen here. And we're going to just go ahead and say view with no criteria. So that's going to return us up to 2,500 parts. The system stops at 2,500 parts because it would bog down the server if we went out there and grabbed, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of part numbers. But in this case, we have the first 2,500. And so we'll go to our General tab, and we can start hitting the next key, and we can flip through them one at a time. We can go to Previous and go back to them. Or we can go to the Search button, and we'll type in a little bit more detail here. And we're going to say Pump. And we'll hit View. And now, everything that's got the word pump in the description. So we can go Next. Or Previous. If we don't want to go through them one at a time, we can jump over here to the List button. Clicking the List brings up all of the parts that we searched for in a list view, and we can scroll down through those parts, or we can click the one that we want, and we double click it, and it brings that part specifically up to us. And you can see that it jumped us to number 630. Now for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go back and pull up our test part here. And I'm going to go in here under the history, because I have a lot of history on this part. Demand means somebody came in and wanted to purchase it. So somebody came in and it shows you the document number 1858. That's the part's invoice number or service invoice number this part was sold on, and who it was sold to. So you've got a few here sold for internal purposes. Here's a Harold Duncan that purchased one. And then after we sold these quantities of 1, we had a purchase order of 25. So we had a purchase order that came in, and then we did a physical inventory, and in the physical inventory we said that we only had 8 on the shelf. Then we sold another 3, and then we did another physical to adjust it because we had some breakage, and then we ordered 4, and we received 4 more, and you see we did another physical. And once I find where the physical is done, I can then start working from there, because the physical is going to override the quantity on hand and say that's my starting point that I actually physicaled. So in this case here, I see 3 minus 1, ordered 12, ordered another 4, sold quite a few, received 12, which is off for this order right here, sold some more of them, drop shipped 1 to a customer, received another 25, and so forth. So you can get the entire history right here on the part. If I wanted to print that history, I could hit the print history button. I can also hit the print button, and it would give me a report of what my search results are. In this case here, since I only search for this one individual part, my master inventory report is only going to show the one part, and it's going to look like this. And it shows the part number, description, bin location, total on hand, total on order, prices, cost, and extended average cost, and the supplier that we get it from. So if I did a search for all of my pumps, this report would just show the information about all the ones that came back in my search results. Let's go ahead and close out of here and go back to our parts screen. Now, only in rare cases should you delete a part, and that's a part that has no history on it. The delete key is grayed out because we do not have security permissions. So those permissions to delete a part should only be given to the highest management level. And the reason why the system will not allow you to delete a part that has ever been sold is Infinity keeps all of the information intact, so no matter when a customer comes back, it could be 10, 15 years from now, you will be able to pull up a copy of his invoice and his transaction history. And if you were to delete any of those parts, when you pulled that invoice up, it would not be able to relate back to that part and get its information. So in that case, instead of deleting a part that you want to get off of all your reports, that's where you'd click the checkbox for active. A few other advanced options you have here is merge the part. You may have some parts that were stocked in as part number 123 and some other parts that were stocked in as part number 124. And then you realize that's the same part number. Yet you don't want to use part number 123 or 124. You want to use a different part number. So you could go up to the part number and you could change the part number to whatever that you wanted, 123 or 124 or 456, whatever part number you wanted. And then you could click merge the part. And then it's going to ask you to find the other part numbers that you want to merge into this one. So you would find that other part and it would pull the histories of those two parts together as if they had always been one part. You can open up the price books, which has already been explained in the advanced invoicing video. You can view all the superseding part numbers, which is called the supersession chain. And this would list all of the part numbers that supersede this part. In this case here, there are no part numbers superseding, so the screen is blank. At the top on the menu, you have File, and you can switch companies. So if you're working with multiple companies and you have permission to view parts inventory at another location or another company on the system, you can go to File and click on the Switch Company. The View option on the menu allows you to get to the history of this part. This is a detailed list of all the changes that were made to this parts record. You know what field was changed, what user changed it, what was the old value, and what is the new value. You can see here in this demonstration, we changed the active checkbox from false to true. False means it is not checked, true means it is checked. So the old value is false and the new value is yes, we checked it off. And then we also did the same for the display on internet during this demo, where we took it from false, which is unchecked, to true. But you can see other things that have been changed also in here, such as the average cost when we ordered something, or the selling packaging was changed to a 4-pack in the demonstration. So at any time that you have an issue where you see that something changed on this part and you need to find out who made the change so you can question them on it, you can come to your history. Your total on hand and total allocated buttons show you all of the totals that you have from all your different locations. So you can see that you have total on hand, how many are allocated, how many on back order, and total on order right here from the screen. And if you had this part in multiple locations, you'd be able to see that also. The total allocated button brings up the allocation of this part only. So it's like the allocation screens that have been demonstrated in previous videos, but this one is just for this part number itself. Now, the best way to adjust your quantities on hand for breakage or theft is to go into the physical inventory and make some changes there, or to go in on a receiving ticket and do what we call a negative receiving ticket, and that gives you a good tracking of the part being adjusted. But many companies don't want that type of detailed tracking. So they have asked us to implement a process where they can come right here to the screen and make changes to the total on hand. And in that case, go to your bin locations tab, and you'll see down here at the bottom, it shows you the total on hand is, and you can say update to a certain number. So I'm going to change this to 4,900 here. Now this again is a security permission. So you want to only give this to the highest level of management to be able to come in here and quickly adjust the totals. And you would put in a comment, lost items. And then you just click the update button. Now the system is giving me a warning. It is saying that it wants my bins to match my total. So at this point, let me go ahead and make that correction before I can do my update. And I want to change this bin to 4,900. And I have 0 here. Let's do something a little, we'll change this to 4,800. And we'll put 100 over here. That gives me the 4,900, which is going to match up to my total on hand that I'm trying to update. Now I can click the update button. And I've updated my quantity on hand using the quick update method. Again, depending on your internal processes, if you want detailed tracking, we would suggest that you go in and do a negative receiving ticket to remove part from the inventory. And that way you get a nice transaction history displayed on your receiving grid.